All right. Hey, good afternoon. Good Saturday, everyone. Welcome to Stop the FOMO. We have Be the Installer back on. It's one of those weekends where more TVs are coming out this week. You just got a new TV, right, Brandon? I just got a new TV, the QN90A. So today I thought it would be appropriate. And for those who don't know, Be the Installer has a great channel. Please subscribe. I did link his channel below in the description. But
I did. Sorry, I just had like 3 different versions of this stream going in my ear, so I had to shut them down quick.
I had to shut a couple off too. Make sure it's out.
I was like, I had literally 2 of them were going, and I got 1 off, and then you were asking, I'm like 2. Yeah, I have a couple. I have 2 65s this year so far.
Tell us which one are they?
I have the Sony A9J and I have the LG C1, which I just did a review on today. So, yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah, I'm having 2 this year as well. The QN90A because, well, more dimming zones. I wanted to make sure it looked good. And the X95J, Sony is going to be a 65 as well. And the Hisense at some point will be coming out. That'll be a 65. And I don't think I'll have a TCL this year because in the 65-inch, there's nothing new, right? It's going to be OD0 that'll be exciting, but that's like 85-inch, crazy larger size. And everything else I'll have will be in the 55, G1, C1. Did you see your C1 65 or 55?
It is a 65.
Oh, nice. Yeah. There's no room.
Yeah, it's, it's funny because people like wonder why we always review 55s. It's because they're manageable. 65, it makes it immediately difficult. Like it's like a 2-person job at that point, Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And then just moving it around,
the stand, it doesn't fit on the stand, but you got to get it's a big space. That's a big difference. It's like 30% more screen size, which is good because you typically pay like 30 or 35% more price.
Right.
But yeah, definitely big.
All right. So let's do this because I'm thinking that 1,500 really is many people's top line budget, right? Because, we like to talk about expensive TV, but the reality is a lot of people, they like to go with round numbers. Number one, I feel like they want to stay under 2,000. And when they say under 2,000, really it means 1,500 because once you add taxes and everything, you're almost at 2,000. So in that price point, what I've noticed is right now we have just at the 2,000 are last year's LG C10, and then last year's $2,000 QNED-T. Well, now it's 2,000. The Samsung QN90T, and then Sony X90J. Surprisingly to me, at the 65-inch is 1,800. Now I'm not going to have that in for a review myself. Do you have any plans for the X90J?
It's very popular request. So whether I'm at someone's house, I'm sure I'll see it. Whether I get it or I have it at a client's house, it's going to start being that. I like you said, it's hard to. I have a lot of TVs going on, so
yeah,
I'm gonna have to start getting rid of some of these or something.
I'll tell you, if Chana Techno Dad lived closer and not Mammoth, we'd be just shoving it to him and say, "Hey, we're holding these TVs for a while."
I know he had a video where he was talking. He's giving away some speakers because he literally was waiting for a box to return him, and those people said, "Hey, just give them away to your subscribers," which is awesome.
Exactly. Well, the speakers he was giving away, I have the same pair. I'm trying to get rid of them, right? Because I was like, I don't want to get a whole home theater with the LG reference, as good as they are, but I don't want like 7 of those things lying around. Oh, here we go. Hey, quick question for you. For Brandon, have you noticed any differences in SDR between C1 and C10? Reports its upscaling is vastly different. So I think he's referring to a recent review by All Things Tech, right? I think he sounds British.
Yeah,
and
he's awesome. I like his videos.
I saw a comparison. Go, that's interesting that the C1 has turned SDR into HDR. And well, you have the C1. I have the C10. I have the C1 yet. What are your thoughts on the SDR if you had a chance?
Yeah, I definitely noticed that it is upscaling more similar. It's more similar or just similar to the Sony OLEDs. From my opinion, between like the Sony and LG is that the LG tries to really exact their upscaling to and then sometimes you get a lot of noise and around the edges, or there's digital noise in the background. Whereas the Sonys, they may not be quite as sharp as the LG in that kind of upscaling, but it's more averaged out, so it doesn't get as much color banding and all that. So I feel like the C1 is more like the Sony in that it's averaging out the edges, as it's not quite as harsh as it was last year on the C10. So I definitely think it's improvement. It's not like drastic, but it was definitely something I noticed up close, you know.
And I think, well, you know, let's just jump right in, because I think this question kind of starts things off, which is, do you still have the C10 at your place?
Oh, I have the C10 is my main living room TV. Right. That's the one that gets the action. Yeah.
But let's hear, what are your initial impressions in terms of which is better than the other and what, or use cases? What conclusions have you had? I know it's early, you're going to have to live with the C1, but what are your initial conclusions right now?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think my initial conclusions are that they're both worth it. It's very much that if you want to pay a premium, the C1 is a great, you know, upgrade in the manner of, you know, it has the upscaling, it has a little more brightness from what I've heard. It looks like it's slightly more, but you know, it's hard to, if it's 100 nits or 50 nits brighter, hard to see that. But it looks a little brighter. The gameplay is cool. The game optimizer is pretty cool. And it doesn't seem to be crushing the shadow detail as much as the C10 did last year. So I did notice that. But
this is in both HDR and SDR, the shadow detail?
Well, it's harder to tell in the HDR, and it just, in general, it looked a little brighter and a little bit like I have to, you know, I have to check all the settings, because in my review, I kind of got them similar, but I didn't actually compare them. They're in different rooms right now. I wanted to just do the C1 by itself as its own TV, just to kind of, you know, like I said, kind of break that cycle of directly comparing it to just the LG, because I feel like both of these TVs are so nice that if I just compared them straight up and that was it, I'd be missing some of the benefits of the C1. Right. So, but yeah, you know, it is a little better, but I also think you're going to pay a little more premium, and I am just fine with the C10. So if people are like, hey, should I get the C10? It's like a top 2 TV in the United States. So it's a very good buy, you know.
And you bring up, well, let's talk pricing. So we have the list, and I may have missed something. So if you guys think I'm missing a TV that's worth considering between $1,500 and above, let me know. But right now, the LG C10 65-inch is around $2,000, and the brand new MSRP C1 is $2,500. So that's a $500 difference. And we're talking, I don't know, that's 25% more. For many people, they just barely saved enough for the 2,000 mark, and to stretch 2,500, they're not getting that much more for stretch, right? My thoughts is, if you have a budget at just say 1,900, I can push them to another 100 to 2,000, but I can't just buy another 600 to the C1.
Agreed. And that's why I think that's why it's going to be like, if you want the newer one, get it. But if you definitely want to, right now, until they run out, especially, you know, when they're at places like Costco, where, you know, a lot of people can go to, I mean, that's the TV of choice at Costco too. And so when they have it everywhere like that, it's a good deal until it runs out, like the C1, the C9 was last year too. I saw that until almost the summer. They had that at Costco last year. So I'm sure they're going to have the C10 for a bit and keep selling that out. And get one. This question is great for you, since you have the A90J and the C1. Are their brightnesses that far apart, assuming you had a chance to look at them back to back? I haven't seen them next to each other, but I can tell you there is an absolute benefit of having the A90J. It is expensive, though. For the most people in a dark room, you're probably not going to see a 2x difference, you know, but it is like, it's, you know, like buying a flashy car. It does have a little bit more flash to it. It is brighter. When I would compare like a Q90T versus a C10 of last year, or the C1 of this year, you know, it's not very close. When you have the A90J in some scenes, especially HDR, you know, the A90J has more spectacular highlights than like the Q90T or QN90A in some instances, where you're just not going to get that with the C1 or C10, you know, but it's still a very great TV. Probably not worth 2 times the price to buy an A90J, unless you got the cash and it's just like, you know, you want the best.
So here's one that not relevant to us because we don't have the G1 yet, but just looking at the pricing, 300 more and you get the G1. I don't think I've seen 2 TVs so close beyond cosmetics, because there is a panel difference. Now, not having the G1, I can't say the G1 is that much better, but what are your initial thoughts of this pricing strategy that LG is putting the C1 against itself?
Yeah, I mean, the G1 and the C1, yeah. I thought last year it was very interesting to have the G10 be basically the exact same TV, but like a wall mountable version. And for me, it was always difficult to recommend that TV when all it was a thinner version of it that could wall mount. And that wall mount doesn't turn very much too. So you can turn it a little or push it flat. Now, most people want it just flat. But this year, it having a brighter panel, it's like now it's got like a, you know, it's better than the C1. Technically, it's going to be brighter. I don't know exactly how much, but it is only $300 more. So it's actually, I think it's nice. It's got a nice price, especially since it's $1,200 less than the A90J too. So, I mean, you got, you know, the G1 is sitting at a pretty good price point, and I think that's why the C1 is probably going to take a dive in the price, but it might be the most popular TV this year because once we get toward the fall, that C1 is going to be selling like crazy.
Oh, I think once the C10 sell out, and I'll continue to suggest the C10 at this price difference. If the C1 drops in price, where you know maybe they're $200 or $300 apart, yeah, go with the C1 a couple of hundred, but at $500, that's a lot. So I think the C10 are going to disappear right after Prime Day because that price is pretty good. Now you've seen both the QN85, the C1. Brightness. What are your thoughts on the brightness? Is that obviously different?
Yeah, the QN85, the QN85A, I think he means, right? And that is way brighter than the C1. Yeah, I mean that I had the QN85A that I had was as bright as the QN90. It was extremely bright. You know, off angle, you know, you can't even put them on the same planet if you're talking about watching the C1 and a QN85A from different angles. Like if it's a wide viewing angle, the C1 blows it out of the water. So that's just one of your typical QLED versus OLED type situations. Bright room, maybe the QN85. Dark room, the C1 kills it. You know,
and the horrible blooming on the QN85 off angle. That's one thing you got to remember. If you're right in front and you're not moving anywhere, that's one thing. But if you're a little off, I don't know if you could unsee that after that.
You can even see some of the blooming from straight on the QN85A. You can see, like, if you pull up the Netflix menu, you can see it at the bottom, like a little bit, you know.
Okay, so
as much as the Q90T last year, you know.
Okay, so just to give you guys know, Brandon knows this. I was on vacation as of like last Sunday, right after our last live stream, and right here I'm missing the news. So Spillage Village is breaking this. Hey, thanks Spillage. I'm surprised that I didn't catch this. This is huge. If true, what are your thoughts on the news of Samsung purchasing OLED panels from LG? Are they ditching QD-OLED or QD-OLED, or just expanding product offerings? Now, this is assuming what you're saying is Samsung Electronics is purchasing OLED panels from LG. This is very interesting because in a recent video I did a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this, right? Where we were saying that the QD-OLED was too dim for Samsung Electronics, so they're telling Samsung Display to go back and make it brighter. And we were also saying that LG has pushed OLED brightness to, well, if you add a cooler, a backplate cooler, suddenly you're over 1,000 nits. And this appears to be what Samsung Electronics, if true, is probably going to do. They're saying, wait, if Sony and Panasonic could do this, what can we do? Maybe we could push it to 1,400 nits and blow the damn thing up, right? But at the end of the day, I think you and I can agree that over 1,000 nits, that is bright enough for almost everything out there in a dark room. In a bright room, yeah, you might need more, but I'm thinking if this is the case, that's probably what Samsung, and it's going to be cheaper for Samsung. QD-OLED is going to be so expensive out the door, everybody. I mean, this is first generation technology, first generation quantum dot color converting filter. You're talking about an $8,000 TV, probably for 65 inches. And anyway, you have any thoughts on this? Because I haven't even followed up. I'm going to have to check that later.
I haven't seen it either. I saw it this morning. I saw that hdtvtest had a review up about it, talking about this kind of mind-blowing information about them buying these. I haven't seen much on it. I'll take your word for it. I typically get information like this from you, so
I know. I'm like, oh,
I'm sure you'll have a good video on it.
I've been scooped by Spillage Village. Thank you so much. This is what happened. And actually, I was like you. I was being the installer. I had to prep a bunch of mounts, TV mounts, and I went out and bought some plywood so I can move my TVs around. Right. So now I have like 4 mounts moving around. Like, oh man. And I didn't even get a chance to check the news. So thank you for that, Spillage Village. This is very interesting, though. This is going to have to change their marketing about OLED if this is the case. And Blues fans, again, thank you for your support. Thoughts on the game optimizer on the C1? When would we expect to see a price drop on the C1, and will we see C10 price go lower? So just generally speaking, I can address the price drops. Prime Day is the first time they will drop it, but it won't be as much as Black Friday, which is always the best time to buy the newest TV. It's Black Friday. Generally, even though it may be constrained, they will discount it somewhat, right? So wait for Black Friday for the best discounts. And the C10, if it goes lower, it may be another 100 at most, but it will likely disappear before it can go beyond that. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think the C1 might be lower priced at that Black Friday time than the C10 was last year. So I just think I have a feeling that they're going to be trying to push the G1 more. I think they're going to need to separate those two TVs more, which is going to give the people that are waiting comfortably for that C1 to drop. It'll be in a good place, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And based on the early reviews that everyone's been mentioning on C1, from you to Digital Trends and Caleb, the C1, it looks like, although it's an incremental improvement, it's what they're doing with the grading, right? They're kind of fine tuning, and it's too bad they don't upgrade the firmware on the C10 to do the same thing, because I suspect it's more of a firmware thing, but who knows? Maybe they have to separate the two somehow. Otherwise, no one will buy the C1. They'll just buy the C10 first.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, that's kind of the basis of what I had said in my review today. It's just that, if you just take, everyone says the most popular request was C1 versus C10. No question. Everyone wants to see it. I think I saw that on yours too. The features do you want to see versus each other? But yeah, I mean, for now, as soon as the C10 is no longer available, then everyone's going to say, is the C1 worth it versus every other TV? And that's what my point is they're both worth it versus almost any other TV out there. Maybe you have two TVs in the, the G1 and the A90J that are better in a dark room with a little more brightness. And, you can, pick your poison with QLED versus OLED in a, moderate room. But I think it's going to be really popular. And I do think it looks better. It's behind me playing the Masters right now. So
nice.
People probably can't see much of it, but I don't want to, put the Masters on a live stream.
And thank you, Quentin Crockett, for this question. Yes, we have a release date. Well, not an exact date, but it is in June. And if they push it back, it wouldn't surprise me, but I believe it's going to be in June, sometime in June, for the X95J launch. And we have a lot of questions about the QNED90 99. So generally speaking, I was very hesitant in the past to do any nanocell IPS TV reviews, only because they're just so dim, even in the dark. But the QNED90 will be their first attempt at a mini LED, and the 99 definitely will be bright, but the 99 is a large TV. So that's an 8K 75-inch. We will have a live stream review with Robert Zone when he unboxes and does the calibration on the 99 for sure. The QNED90 does come in a 65-inch size, but I'm hesitant to get an IPS. Do you have any plans, Brandon, for the QNED90?
I was right with you there. I didn't even know you last year. And I for some reason, just, gravitated toward other TVs instead of the LG Nano TVs. I did see a lot of them when I was in homes, and, I just kind of kept my mouth shut. I don't think that they have, because you see the same blooming and kind of the dirty screen stuff that's going on with the Samsung, but then you're also talking about a fraction of the brightness. So, with that, and kind of like, sometimes I feel the Web OS isn't my favorite OS. So there's just a bunch of things. So it's a personal preference. I know some people like the LG, a little less expensive with, 4K gaming. So I get some questions about that because they're a little bit less expensive than some of the other alternatives.
Right. And that's what I've been suggesting last year, is the Nano 90 represents an affordable entry into what is well worked out VRR 4K 120 HDR. LG's got it working, so that would be the way to go. But if you're watching movies, I wouldn't recommend that. And here we have Z9J will be brighter than last year's model. We have no promises or expectations it will be brighter, but we do expect the darkroom control to be better because they're updating the XR chip and the processor. Basically, they're using the same one that the X900H used so effectively for less dimming zones. So brightness, we don't expect it to be a huge jump, but definitely darkroom performance, less blooming, and deeper blacks. How much will remains to be seen. Let's see, the Sony A8H under $2,000 for the 55-inch, I assume. But yes, on certain sales, I did see it under 2,000. I agree, and that's just like the LG C10. Every now and then it drops under 2,000, and they're both great deals. Have you seen the A8H? What are your thoughts?
I have an A8H. Yeah, I have it. Yeah. It's right now. It's sitting on its side in the corner, so I feel bad.
Because yeah, what are your thoughts at that price?
I love it. I mean, it's a good TV. You know, I actually got it. I got it on that deal early on before Black Friday, where I think they had the 55 was at $1,400, and I believe the 65 was at like $18 or $17.99. So they've had it there before. It would be nice under 2,000. Of course, it's a good TV, but it's tough at this point. If you're a gamer, I think that they probably would wait for some other TV. If you're just watching movies, that's going to be similar to like the C10, C1 difference, where is the A80J going to be much better than the 8H? Or if at that point, sometime in between, in the next few months, is the 8H going to go on discount? But I think, isn't it kind of hard for you to expect a Sony OLED to go that much lower than it currently is? Like the A9G has been pretty expensive for 2 years. So.
And it's still too expensive. I mean, as much as I love it and I have to have it to review because it's a great TV, but if it was my money, I'd still get the LG C9 only because the differences are not so great that I'd be like, oh, it's worth that extra $1,500 or whatever it was at the time. Because I was debating between the C9 and the A9G when I got it. But ultimately, because it won the King of TVs test, I go, okay, I got to have the King of TVs. Yeah. But yeah, I think OLEDs are so good. Generally, even my Vizio OLED, the ones that work, my Vizio OLED looks great.
It does look good.
It does. It looks great, but
that's what the kids have. The kids have that's what they ended up with. I mean, I'm not buying my kids an OLED for fun, but they ended up with the Vizio OLED, and sometimes the Dolby Vision kicks out. Like I will click onto a Dolby Vision show, and it's like a staticky screen, and we have to unplug it and plug it back in. And we had trouble getting the 4K gaming working, so we just turned it to 1.4. The kids didn't really care. They don't play anything of pace, so they didn't care. But for the most part, it's a pretty good picture quality. It's not as accurate even after calibrated. It looked a little green, but yeah, that's good. And I was going to say with the A8H and the A9G, I don't know if it's just the way that they calibrate them and set them up, but I do find that the LG looks a little bit brighter and a little bit more punchy when you're watching most content. And when you watch like a really good HDR movie with those Sonys, they look fantastic. But if you're watching your typical content, I feel like the LG C10 and now the C1 just looks a little better on the day-to-day. So I know that they're scored very closely on like art ratings and things like that. So
right,
personal preference.
Absolutely. And thank you, Earthgathy Grius, for reminding me. And if I do miss your super chat or any question, just ask again. Sometimes it just scrolls up too fast and I miss it. But when will the 48-inch C1 be released? And if it's anything like last year, it would be sometime in the summer. I will try to get an exact date from Robert. So oftentimes these delivery dates are pushed unexpectedly because, well, constraints and the Suez Canal, like last month or last couple of weeks, right? So I'll try to get an exact date, but keep in mind that it may be a few weeks before it's officially out. But we do expect the 48-inch at least sometime in the summer. And thank you, Willie Davis, for your support. Okay, so back to what I was saying, best TVs over 1,500. And what I have for you guys, everything that's highlighted in yellow are OLEDs, and in white are the non-OLED TVs. And someone mentioned that I didn't include the LG QNED90, and partially I'm not getting a lot of information on that TV, and I have no experience in terms of how LG will be doing their QNED this year, especially with the number of dimming zones, because the one thing that everyone needs to remember is MiniLED alone does not improve the performance. You still have to have a lot of dimming zones. And this is something in my interview with Bob O'Brien. He was very adamant that the two most important things in a non-OLED for darkroom performance is the number of dimming zones and that OD0 on the mini LED. But the mini LED themselves do very little to improve darkroom performance. So with the QNED90, I'm not getting a number of dimming zones from anyone yet, and even Value Electronics does not know. So if it comes out with like something ridiculously small, like 100 dimming zones, it's unlikely I can recommend it, only because it's not going to beat out a similarly priced Samsung with double or 3 times the number of dimming zones. So those are my thoughts on the QNED90. But again, it's all speculation. Once it is released, we'll get more details and we can talk about that. So that's why the LG QNED is not there. Is there anything on this list, Brandon, that you think I'm missing? I need to include?
No, I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I mean, the Q90T had on there the Q80T, but similar. I think that 65-inch might be right around that price too. I know that's not as popular any longer, but
yeah,
I think they still have something like the Q8DT at Costco as well. So there's kind of some of those TVs floating around.
Willie, your price is all over the place. Thank you for your support. So you got the $5,000 QN900A, and then you have the $4,000 A90J. You have like just under
2,800. Yeah.
Okay. If it was my money and a 65-inch, I definitely would not choose an 8K TV. Mostly because you're losing out more than you're gaining. It's not going to be as bright as a 4K. Now, maybe this year it is. So I take that back. The QN900A this year appears to be super bright, but the 8K, it holds back in darkroom performance for whatever reason. That was my experience last year. We'll see how the QN900A does this year, but is it worth $2,500 more than the QN90A? And I don't think so. So if it is the same or barely better at 65 inches, it's really a discussion between the A90J and the G1 or the QN90A. What are your thoughts on his predicament?
Well, I think if I would agree with you on pretty much what you said. I think if he's looking at it from like, what is the best TV money can buy for my living room, then I would say, the QN900A would be a choice that could, you could buy if your room is pretty bright and you watch a lot of things in the daytime. So if you're watching sports, there's those, you have to balance whether you want bright sports during the day, if you have a lot of windows, all that kind of same QLED versus OLED conversation. But I was curious in these 3 TVs as a kind of a comparison is like top dog. But again, they just have those different advantages and disadvantages. So if he knows, if Willie knows if his room's going to be bright all the time, or if you're going to be just watching things at night. I mean, if you're just watching basketball at night, I think that LG G1 is going to sneak in there. You're going to be saving quite a bit of money, and it looks really nice if it's wall mounted. You got to get the feet if it's not, but I would probably choose the G1 if it's like, if you're watching sports, things like that, and you can control the light. But who knows? They're all pretty good TVs.
I think that one part that may force him into the A90J is the sports. Let's say he watches hockey, that ABL issue.
True.
We need to test the G1 to see how many seconds, minutes before the ABL kicks in. If it doesn't kick in, then the G1 over the A90J for sports. If it does kick in, then the A90J or the QN90A for sports, if you're watching the kind of sport that results in the automatic brightness limiter kicking in. Did the Vizio OLED ever get those VRR and 4K 120 fixes? Have they abandoned this year's line for 2022? So, Nintendo Power, thank you for the question and your support. Vizio released 2021 TVs in 2020 because, yes, they are skipping a generation. They only want to release one model lineup for 2020 and 2021. So they'll have something in 2022. As far as VRR 4K 120 fixes, I haven't heard anything. I'll follow up with them. I do check their FAQ, but it doesn't look like it's out. But if there's any updates, check my community page. I will update you guys on a posting to see if they've done anything special with that. And yeah. What are your thoughts on Vizio in general, Brandon? Because I've had quality control issues myself.
Yeah, it's just been one of those things that in my professional life over the past many years, I tend to, have a lot of issues with Vizio.
Yeah, me too.
So it's just like I'm hoping for the best, and I'm always looking for it to be great. But I've shown up to installs where like the Quantum X, different TVs, different models just don't turn on, or in the middle of setup, it just blacks out and I have to like take the TV back for customers. So there's been a lot of issues like that. Then the Vizio OLED, I liked, gets a little brighter. I feel like, when you get into certain modes, it gets a little brighter than the other OLEDs, but at what cost? And, and then also the color is a little more inaccurate. So just and some of those same issues with the VR and the 4K at 120, it doesn't connect like an LG. LGs just connect to anything. It just works. Agreed. And even Samsung's for the most part, but the Vizio it's not there, it's not the exact quality. So at a discount, not too bad for the Vizio OLED.
Yep, and always get it with some kind of warranty, like a Costco return or extended warranty.
Good point.
Another question: TCL 2021 line up. Okay, so you got all these XL models coming out from non-mini LEDs all the way up to the top of the line OD0. So the biggest improvements will be 8K 6 series, which will be the larger TVs. I don't think they're going to release a 65-inch 8K 6 series. The OD0 will come out in Q3, and rumor is it's very similar to the Samsung QN90A system. So at 3,500, which is the rumor, 3,600 for an 85-inch TCL OD0, I think that's worth it. If it holds to that price, I'm planning to get that for the home theater reviews we'll be doing. So yeah, that's TCL, but subject to change. The Vidrian was never released, and we know why, by the way. It is super expensive. Apparently Vidrian would have pushed the TCL into the $10,000 range had it been released last year, because they just released it in China for $15,000. I was like, okay, I'm glad you guys didn't release it here.
That might fly there. That doesn't fly. Yeah, I don't think that's going to fly in the US.
And your Rob Gjo 42, we kind of mentioned this. The G10 and the C10 are nearly identical. So other than the wall hanging, right? You didn't notice any other difference. Then I'm just going to put the C10 up because you're just paying for thinner wall hanging.
Yeah, I think it is identical. The TV is identical. The panel and everything. It's just literally, it's looks nice on the wall, and it really does.
It does. C10 at 1350 or C1 at 1800? Yeah, we were talking about this. I take the C10 1350 because percentage-wise, that's a huge.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah, and as much as the C1 is a little bit better, it's not like almost $500 better if you have it at 1350.
I mean, really, if you think about it, what TV from last year to this year is more than 10% better than its previous model? Like, like, so if you're paying right there, that's almost a 50% jump. It's like, 40% jump on the price to get, which, a TV that is newer and nicer, but it is in a long line of very nice LG OLEDs, so the C10 is nice.
So Mr. Brock, should I buy a 55-inch LG C10 for a PC monitor sitting at my office desk? Depends on how far you are. If you,
I would probably say yes.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Or the 48-inch, right? If you sit that close, 48-inch may give you higher pixel density. And 2 feet, I'd go 48. 3 feet, 4 feet, 55 is fine. It really depends on your use case. Are you using any of these OLEDs as a monitor?
I don't think I could. I don't think I could. I have a 32-inch curved like Dell gaming monitor, 1080p. This is already gigantic to me. So to have something that large, I'd have to sit back here to be able to enjoy that. Yeah.
And yes, Blues fan, if you have a sports ticker on the bottom that is literally running hours a day, that sports ticker may end up burning in what they call the persistent logos on the ticker. So the moving ticker itself, not as bad, but you have a persistent, like an ESPN logo that's there the whole time. Bad things will happen. Have you ever had any burn-in experiences, Brandon?
No, both. No, right now I have all 3 of last year's. They all look great. I did, I ran some of those tests last time we were talking. The They look good. I was going to say, I don't know if you want me to tell you this now, but on the C1, like my A90J, I had some grid banding on them. So I had both of them. My first units had this like grid-like banding on them. Now I took the A90J back because it had a really darkened area. But on the C1, I followed some advice of one of my buddies, like the Ninjician, who's on here. He actually told me, you know what? Run a couple, refresh the pixels, do the pixel refresh. I ran it, came back on, ran it again, and it actually helped quite a bit. It took away almost all of that grid-like banding on the TV. It just disappeared. So I heard that might be the case, but it happened.
And that was on a pixel refresh feature on the C1, which does the C10 have as well, right? That it's the exact same menu setting option to get that pixel refresh, because a lot of people, the C10 have been complaining about that. Since I don't have it, I had a hard time trying to find out what was the issue, but some people did. So yeah, hear that, everyone? Try pixel refreshing, and then if it doesn't work, you might have a claim. Thank you, Cyber, for your support, and we love you too.
Oh, geez, that mean he's complimenting me? That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
that's
always awesome. Make the channel. That's what I always tell people. It's like Seinfeld, right? Seinfeld alone doesn't cut up any people on his show. Mohammed Rashid, thank you for your support. C1, C10 settings. Have you finished going through your settings yet?
Oh, I haven't. I mean, I'm pretty boring when it comes to settings. I'm not like the super settings guy. I leave that to smarter people than myself. I follow your typical. I'll put on. I'll say it. I'll put on a little bit of motion if I have to, because sometimes when I'm watching movies and they're panning, and I get a little dizzy when I see that like judder on an OLED. So I'll put it on low minimal settings, but I don't like the black frame insertion or the high true motion. It makes me dizzy as well. But again, this is not the same as like when the TVs came back out in the day, like 10 years ago, when those TVs came out in like the 240, they were trying to do the 240 refresh rate or whatever. That stuff was way different than TVs now. It's not the same. When Soap Opera Effect happened 10 years ago, that would make you almost throw up watching it. So it's a lot different now, but it's still a personal preference. And for the most part, I don't like, a lot of additional motion. I don't even know what the question was now. I think I lost you the question.
C10, C1, same settings?
Oh, the settings. Yeah. Pretty much I had it the same as last year. I haven't made a video on it or anything. Yeah. But I'm going to go into, I'm going to compare the C10 and C1 just because I have them both and people are asking for it. So maybe I'll throw some information out then.
What I normally do with my and that's why I have a calibrator, so I let someone smarter than me figure it out. They put in their setting, but remember, my settings are for movie accuracy, right? So a lot of you will have different priorities. If you have a bright room, you're going to pump it up more than I will, and you may watch it in natural or dynamic mode in a bright room, whereas I'm in a dark room. So a lot of times I tell people my settings are supposed to be watched in the dark, like the gamma setting, right? I set my gammas on high because I have a pitch dark room. But then on the Vizio, if the gamma setting is too high, then everything is too dark. You even get crushed shadow details. So on the Vizio, I end up using a gamma of like 1.8, 2.0 or something like that. So definitely to taste. But yeah, as soon as I get the C1, I'll share you guys one more time what I'm putting for C1 and C10 movie settings, because definitely game settings are so personal. TCL 6 Series 2020 LAC 2.1, and for the most part, a 4K TV other than VRR, you don't really need it. So HDMI 2.1 has been, there's a lot of confusion. People don't realize that unless you're doing 4K 120, and you have content that really needs a 4K 120, you don't need 2.1 to have everything else that 2.0 has, and that includes VRR and EARC. So for 4K TVs, 2.1 is that edge case for 4K 120 gamers. So Nintendo, if you're not a gamer, you don't need 2.1.
A lot of people also comment that they can do 1440 at 120 as well and things like that. So The 6 series TCL TV was pretty nice. It was actually all right, not too bad. It had similar, kind of the similar things that the QN85 has, though. When you're off angle, you see a lot of those mini LEDs like popping through the screen. So the dimming wasn't great on that TV, but it's still pretty good TV.
Yeah, for under $1,000 was awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely.
A good gaming TV. Should upgrade my 950 TS to the 900A. Azim, you're like upgrading every year. So for gaming, 950 TS and 900 TS is not good, right? I mean, there are issues. That was their first implementation of, well, attempting to get gaming to work better. So we expect the QN900A to be better gaming at 8K, but I wouldn't upgrade just for gaming. But hey, if you need a second TV, we expect gaming to be better. And the QN900A is definitely a good TV if that's your budget. And thank you again for your support.
It's a tough upgrade, man. It's expensive.
Yeah, I know, right?
Where are you going to put that other one?
Yeah.
Send it over to my house.
And how big is it, right? Is it 85 inches? Because that's an 8K TV. So you're bouncing around 25-inch TVs. You're getting the 65 QN900A, right? Is that the size you're going for?
That was my goal. And I think we had a miscommunication last time. I don't have the 65-inch Q90T, so I don't have that. I was planning on getting the QN900A, comparing that to like the A90J and just kind of see like, if that was, but I already did that kind of with the Q90A and like then, the QN90A, and then you spoke with the guys over at Value, which were saying that they're pretty similar. I'm still interested. I still feel like the increased dimming zones and maybe if they work on that for the next year here, that could be a really nice TV, because when you see those 8K TVs in a bright room, they're pretty awesome. They look really nice. So when we compare against everything else and you're putting them up against each other, then it becomes a little more difficult, or in a dark room. But I've seen like the Q900T or the Q900A, whichever it was a couple years ago, or the R in a bright room. And man, that was really awesome. Nice TV.
Well, here's the opposite: QN90A versus C1 in a dark room. What are your thoughts? Because you have both. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I like the OLED in a dark room. So I feel like when you stare at OLEDs often, you then find every little problem with a QLED. So if my QN90A didn't have the dirty screen that was very evident when you're watching anything in anything bright panning, I would have probably had a better experience for that review. Overall, I still said it was, pretty good, pretty bright. But then when I started matching it up against, the first thing that I did is I matched it up against A90J, which wasn't a real fair fight, of course. Sure. And, but the C1 doesn't have as punchy of highlights. So I think that the QN90A is good, but I don't know if I would take it in a dark room over a C1,
And I would have to agree with you. Dark room watching, your eyes are very sensitive to shadow detail and the deep blacks. And the C1, that's what they're known for. So you're putting the QN90A in its weakest position, although it is definitely improved for a non-OLED, but you're putting against an OLED strength, which is a dark room, right? Even the C10 in a dark room is going to look great. But it's a lot of people just want the brightest possible. And here he's saying brightness is preferred. The QN90A will get brighter than a C1 in a dark room, like really bright. I'm playing with it now. I'm like, wow, this thing is it's pretty.
Yeah, it can give you some eye strain even when you're gaming, especially in gaming in a bright gaming system, because you're used to movies where it gets darker and brighter and darker and brighter. But when you're playing a bright game, it's just like in your face the whole time. So it's a good experience, and I know a lot of people like it and they don't want to worry about the potential of burn-in. So and I've had people say like, I can deal with minimal dirty screen because I've had this TV in the past that was just like a nightmare, and it's like pink in the corner and all this. So don't get it wrong, like the QN90A and the C1, like we're nitpicking them because they're both really good TVs. And I think I find myself regretting picking on the QN90A a bit. I knew I was going to be a bit harsh on it, but I was just really hoping that the mini LED would be like perfect, and nothing's perfect. And
as we all know, dirty screen it's a nature of the panel lottery, right? Yeah. One person's dirty screen and another person doesn't have it, and then they're going to say, wait, my TV doesn't have dirty screen. That's one that's going to change from TV to TV, whereas the brightness is going to be very similar across all the TVs. And Was the Sony X950H a disappointment? I'm going to have to say yes, in the context that the 900H had better dimming control performance with like 1/3 the number of dimming zones. The X950H did not use the X900H's blooming control algorithm. Now, for 2021, all the TVs are using that upgraded algorithm that the 900H introduced. So now the X95J is what it should have been last year in the 950H, but that's in a dark room. In a bright room, the 950H kills it. So in a dark room, I wouldn't choose it. In a bright room where I don't care much about the super dark deep blacks, I take the 950H, especially for that price of $1,600. 200 less than the 90J. I think the 950H is going to be a better TV in a bright room. What are your thoughts on the 950H? I didn't know if you had any experience with that last year.
Yeah, I did. I've seen a bunch of them. That's a popular TV. Both those Sony TVs are popular ones that I get called upon to install for people. And a lot of the times it's because they're pretty well priced at the larger sizes too. If you get in like the 75 and 85 inch, you're getting like the 900H for like under $2,000 for was it an 85 or a 75 was like $2,000.
Yeah.
Tough to beat that price. So those were really good. I think the TCL 635 was the only one that was close in that size.
And especially in the larger sizes, you got dirty screen effect worse than any other size. And Sony, better than any other TV, consistently gives less DSC than Samsung or anyone else. So when you combine that, I think the disappointment of darkroom is offset by, you know what, there's less banding. And for me, that actually may be worth it because I assume that there is no banding, right? Because I asked Robert to only get me TVs without banding, but that's not the case for most people.
Yeah. But no, I think both those TVs are there. You know, I think people accept the value that they get those two TVs at. So I think that the X950H has pretty good anti-reflective coating. It was pretty bright. I did an installation recently where I installed a 75-inch version of that TV over a fireplace, and the people were stunned. They watched that 8K, what was it, Gemini movie, that clip on YouTube, and they were just like, I mean, it looked like he was like sitting through a window in that, so it's a pretty sharp TV. I wasn't a huge fan of the X900H just because it combined like all the negatives of the things that I don't like. Like people like the native contrast, and then they talked about the 4K gaming. Well, it ended up that you don't have all the 4K gaming and you still have all the blooming, and you don't have that much brightness. It's not much. I think it might be on par with like the C10 as far as brightness, but then still has, pretty good contrast, but nothing in a dark room. You can't with the blooming and it didn't look great in a darker room.
Yeah. And congratulations, Blues fan. You just made your mind and ordered a C10. So the good thing with the C10 is there's so much information about it, and they've had so much time to improve the VRR, the near black gamma shift, and the Dolby Vision issues. So the C10 is really well worked out. Now, I don't know if there's a question here, but the Sonos is a great choice. Hey, didn't you review a Sonos soundbar before?
I have a Sonos Arc underneath my C10. So I have it hanging from it. It says, is this other mounting? Any other mount? I actually use, if that's what they're asking about, the Sony 5.1. I'm not sure what the 5.1 means. If they're talking about the Arc or it sounds like maybe the Beam, but either one of those can be mounted under it. They make this really nice wall mount, or you can get a wall mount. Like, they have cheap ones on Amazon. They have expensive ones from Sonos, whatever. But they also have this thing called the Sanos SASB1. And there's a version of it from Rocketfish that you can hang any soundbar from the TV as you mount it. You actually put the bracket that hangs down. And then now it has these cool flippers that kind of flip out so that the Arc enabled soundbar can come out, or the Atmos enabled soundbar can be brought out from the TV a bit. So mine sticks out a couple inches in front of our OLED. It doesn't look bad. I've had pictures of it on my, in my videos, but it really is nice because then when we turn our TV left and right, the soundbar turns with it. So we have our dining room table is off to the side. Then we can have that directly at us. Not necessary, but it does hang from it nicely. And then you can clean up, because all we have is an Apple TV and that soundbar. And then that's all on the wall, and nothing needs to be, there's no cords hanging down or anything. So
I think I figured out his questions. He's talking about the Sonos Arc.
Yeah, if the Sonos Arc, which is a 5.1.2, right?
Right. It will
Yeah,
be. Is it low? Is it going to be? Is it high, or is the C10 high enough so you could stick the Sonos
oh
Arc?
no, you can't. No, you can't. Not on the stand. No, it would have to go. I
Okay.
got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Wall mounted. Hang it from it. That looks cool.
Other than that, obviously, that's it. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Thank you, Nintendo. Another question. Would you consider X900E a good gaming TV? Well, given the VRR 4K 120, for old school console, yes, but you're not using any of the latest and greatest features in the next gen consoles or PC gaming. And specifically, we're talking 4K 120 and or VRR. And for many people, 4K 120, it looks smoother. So I know Brian could not be here today. He wish he could, but he loves 4K 120. He just enjoys that smoothness, and you're not getting out the X900E. But old school, like Nintendo Switch, I think it's fine. You have an experience with the X900E, Brandon?
No, I haven't. I can't remember that far back. No, I don't. I haven't. I wasn't messing around with Sony's back then as much. I had a couple of Samsungs back in the day, so I had to. I think that was at a 2018 or 2017 TV. I have I had a KS8000 Samsung, so I was rocking that for a while.
Okay, and sorry, I almost missed this. Cyborg T100. Thank you for your gift. What's our favorite content, movies and game genres that you watch on your best TV? So my favorite content, so for me, it's always through Blu-ray, and it's action movies like Infinity War or anything. Superman, doesn't matter. If it's action and there's great HDR impact, my best TV is the one that gives me the best HDR. So, but I have to say Netflix is catching up. Disney Plus, their streaming HDR is actually pretty good. So now I'm finding myself just flipping on the stream and watching 80 HDR on my best TV. And it depends on the content. So on subtle movies like Pan's Labyrinth, I'd watch it on the Sony A90J. But on something where I want that pop and impact, I'd watch it on the Q90R or the Q900T. And gaming genre, I'd do it on the LG C10 exclusively, only because it's OLED, it pops, it does HDR right. I don't have to worry about anything working. How about you?
You're just talking about favorite content? This question that's on the screen here?
Yeah. What's your favorite content?
My favorite content, I watch movies a lot. So, I mean, I'm a big time movie watcher. I enjoyed watching, I watched Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner on the A90J. That was pretty awesome. But I watch all kinds of movies, and what I like about some of these new streaming services or some of the content in general and how good these TVs are, something to which you've said about the all things text video or all things tech, is that, man, sometimes it's hard to tell if you're watching it on HD or 4K, and you know, the different services look so good. I have the Spectrum app that I watch movies on, and I got all these movie channels for a really cheap price, and I'll watch movies and I'll be like, wait, am I on like Netflix or am I watching? And I'm like clicking over and I'm like, wow, this is just HD here. This isn't even this looks really good. Yeah. They have the widescreen bar, so you forget, but the SDR sometimes looks so good on these TVs that I forget. But I watch a lot of movies. I like, action movies, and I'll test them with some of those movies like that have just a ton of action and a ton of difficult scenes to see which one's the best.
Yeah. Disco Dick. Oh, welcome back. Thank you for your gift. I watch mostly HD sports content. Will I see much of a difference between my Panasonic Plasma and LG C10? Maybe. You know what? I was going to say the biggest difference is HDR pop because of the dynamic range, but if it's just HD sports content, the Plasma may have more pleasant motion. I had the Pioneer Curo Plasma that I enjoyed immensely before it died, and I replaced it. But for just HD sports content, I was watching college football all day long on that and had noticed not a huge improvement on the LG C10 when I moved to that. I don't think it's much of a difference if all you're watching is HD sports content. What are your thoughts?
Well, I just think that HD sports and the way that they're broadcasting it and the different sources you get it from now just are continuing to improve. And I don't think I think most people that have plasmas, sometimes I feel like they overestimate how much they think that plasma looks compared to some of these new TVs, and the new TVs look really good. So for the most part, when I have people ask me these questions, I have an old plasma and I want to know what TV to get. A lot of them get the C10 and then they're like, wow, it looked a lot better than I thought. So, but yeah, I mean, sports is sports. I had mine calibrated, which made it improved it. I had it probably for 6 months before it was calibrated. And as soon as I had the C10 calibrated, sports looked a lot brighter. It was pretty blue. My screen was pretty far off. So it looks great. And I watch a lot of sports and bright sports, and I am just fine with it. And I watch it in the daytime with, a lot of lights on and stuff. And our room is somewhat bright, and it looks pretty good.
Zachary Wasserman, thank you for jumping on this question. Thank you for your contribution to our channel. Have you guys heard anything about the Samsung QD-OLED release dates or quality? Debating between the 77-inch LG G1 or waiting for one of these new generation technologies. So this is interesting. This kind of segues into the scoop, the breaking news that maybe Samsung, for whatever reason, is buying LG OLED panels. So if you guys watched my previous video, maybe a week and a half ago, Samsung Electronics is not happy with the QD-OLED's progress brightness. It's not bright enough, so they're asking Samsung Display to produce a brighter panel. And that's one of the reasons why they haven't introduced it yet. So the question about when, if ever, QD-OLED will be released, until they figure out the brightness, it'll never be released. Because even though Samsung promised they will be selling QD-OLED, if it's not bright enough, they can't sell an $8,000 TV that doesn't get as bright as the $2,000 LG C10. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And what does QD bring to the table? It gives you wider color gamut, but most people stream content, and the wide color gamut, it's not so much of an improvement that it justifies that premium. So I get the G1. The QD-OLED, when it comes out, will be 3 times more expensive than that 77-inch G1. I don't see it as 3 times close to being an improvement. But what do you think? Wait for a better generation. Get the G1 now, Brandon.
Man, a 77-inch G1. I think people underestimate how good that TV is going to look in your wall. Like, these TVs are gorgeous in person, and that I haven't installed that the G1 or the G10 in that size, but man, when I get an opportunity to, I'll record that for sure, because they are amazing looking TVs, and on both the wall and how good it's going to look, even if it's not that much brighter than the C1, maybe 100 more nits, which is, I don't know. I've seen some people have measured it. I can't remember what they had said, but it's still going to look good. It's going to look awesome. I would buy it.
X95J or Go OLED. So we're going to go use case here. Now, the X95J is going to be less expensive than most OLEDs. However, if we look at our list here, the X95J, 2300, 65-inch, and for 2000, you get an LG C10. So if you're in a dark room, I'd go with the LG C10 all day long, even though I haven't seen the X95J yet. It doesn't have as many dimming zones as the QN90A. I know that for sure. So its darkroom performance will be meh at best. Now, in a bright room, X95J would be a great option because it will be brighter. The colors, everything will be punchier because you're not going to notice that deep dark blacks. But for, let's say, 2300, I in a dark room, I have to go with the LG C10. In a bright room, yeah, it's not bad. I think it could stand on its own in a bright room. What are your thoughts about his X95J or OLED?
I'd like to see if there's an improvement. And besides, I know there's no mini LED. I wonder, it looks like the TV still might be a little thinner, which isn't a huge deal, but I just was wondering about what the benefits are going to be this year besides the 2.1 on the X95J. But for the most part, I have made it pretty clear that I'm a fan of OLED TVs because of that, the dimming issues. So if the X95J is similar to the X90J, which, is getting kind of mixed reviews so far, maybe I had said early on in the year, it might be the same old for Sony, but, adding the 2.1. So maybe that's still the case. I would take the C1 for sure.
Ehab Diwidar has an excellent comment that I'd like to address. So FOMO. I never talk about budget TVs like the Nano 90 or the Q80A, and let me tell you why. Anything under, I don't know, $1,300 will be destroyed by the TCL 6 series or the Hisense H9G. And I'm just talking picture quality. I can't even make an argument other than exclusive gaming features that's on the Nano 90, and we talked about like the VRR 4K 120, if you need that, yeah, the Nano 90, because nothing else does it at that price point. And the TCL comes close, but it's only like 1440 VRR limited. But if you're talking about watching everything else, sports, streaming, movies, I cannot suggest a Nano 90 or a Q80A or a Q80T over a Hisense H9G or a TCL R635 from last year. But that's me. What about you? What are your thoughts about budget TVs under 1500?
So, I feel like they used to be okay, man, back in the day. A few years ago, you could get something like a decent Samsung 8 series TV that didn't look so bad, but they really sucked it out. I think that I've watched some of your videos on some of these TVs, like the Hisense and the TCL, probably a year ago, that I was just like, yeah, man, this is, your mindset in this is always been like helpful to me in comparing apples to apples. Or I think I looked at one of your charts where you said like where you're coming from and what features you need. And some of those charts can really help people out to see like where you need to go and what's going to be an upgrade for you. And so, I love the Hisense H9G. So I couldn't buy the Nano 90 or, the Q80A. I would either choose to get something that is a little better price, like a little more feature rich, like you're speaking of in the TCL or Hisense, or I just pony up the dough and go a little higher into a QN90 or QN80, probably not the QN85, but QN90 or an OLED. So yeah,
And
I hear you.
And that's great for you guys because TCL and Hisense, they know exactly how to price their TVs and give you the features you want. They strip away all the fluff. They go, look, this is the bare minimum high quality TV for the lowest price we can charge. And it will beat anything up to $1,400, something like that, right? And that's why it's hard to make the case for anything when there's the Hisense or the TCL in that price range. All right. Well, Mastrov, thank you. You watch football all day Sundays. Any issues with the C10 or C1? Or what would you recommend? Small amounts of gaming. So I can tell you the C10 looks great. However, because I'm in a dark room, I don't blast the brightness. So I don't really have ABL because it's not that bright for me. Some people complain about the ABL kicking in the C10 too quickly. Although it may not always be with football, sports generally has that issue. What are your thoughts about football on Sundays, C10 or C1?
I've been watching football on Sundays for the last year on a C10, so it's great. It's
right?
fine. Yeah, the ABL, I guess that would probably be more likely to be on something like hockey where it is a white screen, and even that I think people could deal with it because of how good it looks for other content you watch. But I would say football Sundays is just fine on the C1 or the C10. It scales nicely, and I think it's great. I have no problem with that at all. And some gaming. So there you go. I mean, that's one of the best TVs for gaming. If you do some gaming, you're going to love the LG, the OLEDs.
Can 1080p 120 Series X? I'm sorry, Earthgeek. I don't know. I never thought about that. I don't have the 950H to test for you, so I will have the X95J. I know that doesn't help you much, but I'll tell you this. Artings would have tested it, but not on the Xbox Series X. They try to run to see if a TV is capable of 120. I don't know if they tested 1080p 120 on the 950H, but they've tested most of the resolutions that people use. So try Artings, and otherwise, I will keep that in mind and try to post an update somewhere, somehow for you. Sorry. Yeah, some of these questions are like, man, they're like very esoteric but stick on that. Maybe I could do better with this. Color gamut QN90A or C1. So I can tell you definitely the QN90A will have slightly better color gamut. That's because of quantum dots. That's what quantum dots are known for, is the wider gamut over OLED. Now, that's not to say you guys will notice a difference. However, we will check. So if you watched my last video on wide color gamut, maybe that inspired your question. So my video was about content that demonstrates that BT 2020 color. And if there is a difference, we're going to see it on a movie like Inside Out or Aquaman. So I'll definitely compare the QN90A to the C1 in terms of color gamut. So we'll see. Now, in theory, QN90A will have wider color gamut than C1, but in practice, that remains to be seen. You don't look at color gamut, do you, Brandon? I should ask you. Maybe you know.
No, I was actually researching your last question there. So sorry, I lost a little. I got your answer though. It does run 1080p at 120, just so you know.
Yay,
So I apologize. What was the next question? I feel bad now.
Do you even check color gamut when you look
No,
at
I'm gonna start doing some calibration, get the calibration equipment. Just something I hadn't done, but I will be doing more testing on my TVs.
Oh, great. We can compare notes and have fun. Oh, but that's great. 1080p 120 on the 950H is possible. So there you have it. Thank you again, Cyborg GT100. Your TV is LG LH3000 upgrade, 2000 to spend. I want a gamer TV, but size limit less than 40. You got a lot of money.
I know. There's a lot of people have these like specifics they give you. It's like sometimes it's hard to like navigate these specifics.
So the good news is it's not a TV, but Asus is in the process of, it just launched a $1,800 monitor that is HDR 1000, I want to say, maybe even 1400, but it's at least HDR 1000. It's HDMI 2.1, but it's a gaming monitor and it's 43 inches. That's smaller than 48 inch, but it doesn't have a tuner. I think it might have audio, but there are no TVs of that premium quality under 48 inch. Now, rumors are there may be a 42 coming out end of the year. We'll see from LG. But right now, you're going to have to look at a gaming monitor, and that would be probably the Asus 2021 HDMI 2.1 43 inch. Have you seen any quality TVs for under 48 inch? Maybe I just don't know about them.
No, you're again back. This is a gamer thing or more of a you thing. I haven't. No.
When something's that small, it's not even a me thing, right? And I know.
No, that's yeah.
It looks like he's from Europe, and Japan and Europe, they need TVs under 50 inches, and this guy wants under 48 inches, right? Or gal. So, but thank you for that question. Now, on this list, what do you think is the best value given, regardless of price, between the 1,600 and 5,000? I'm thinking the 2000 LG C10 is really a good bang for the buck, given the competition and that the range from 1,600 and above.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it was a great TV when it came out. It's still a great TV. And it's a great TV anywhere in between. It's one of the best. It really is, especially for that price.
Now, for those of you who cannot get an OLED, let's say, for whatever reason, you need it bright, you're just afraid of burn-in, doesn't matter what it is you do with that TV, you want it bright and no burn-in, then I'd have to say, in a bright room, I normally do recommend the 950H because now you're going against Samsung, and in a bright room, the Sony actually, I think, looks better than the Samsung in a bright room, with the exception is the glare. The QNED has the anti-glare that I think is better than the Sony X950H. So that glare makes up the difference for me. If I have a glare problem, then I'd go with the Q90T. If I don't, I'd go with the 950H. And then above that, you have more expensive non-OLEDs that I can't justify their premium. But which one would you choose for a non-OLED if that's what you need?
I think I would go between those two you're speaking at. I mean, if you're not talking about the QN90A now, but if the X950H, it's a pretty good all-around TV. I mean, it is. It's like you're saying, the anti-reflective coating is not quite as harsh. It's not as when you have a light to the side or at the top of the above you can, and so the Q90T, and if it goes dark, you can see that thing streak across the whole TV, and sometimes it's distracting. But in a really bright room, they knock the reflection down really well. So I think that's just a personal preference. If they like a Samsung or they like a Sony, they're both pretty solid. But yeah, either one of those.
And Therese Johnson missed our earlier conversation. So you're saying, since the C10 is the best one there, you would not upgrade from a G10 to G1? No, I would not. Would you? If you had a G10?
I mean, I don't know the benefit. I don't know what you'd be doing that for. Basically, we're going to bid a new TV for like 10% more brightness. That's,
And I think that's one thing that we have to emphasize. Yes, the G1 will be brighter, but we're talking peak brightness, maybe 200 to 200 nits, right? And, a few minor details, but you're talking getting a whole new TV for that, where
if you got somewhere to stick the other one, then fair enough,
There you go. Yeah, because I'm thinking that if you're watching most content, Netflix, streaming, whatever, 90% of the time, you're not going to tell the difference. The 10% is what you're upgrading for. And do you watch 10% those movies? So for example, let's say, for example, I don't know if this is true, but if it's solved the ABL like the Sony did and you watch a lot of hockey, okay, worth going to the G1, right? Because you solved a specific problem. But if you don't have a specific problem that the G10 is addressing, I mean, the G1 is addressing, I'd stay with the G10 unless there's a specific shortcoming that you're looking to solve with the G1.
Yeah. I think some people that maybe have the G10 just have that, like, did I buy the wrong TV because it's no different than the C10? Maybe that's the case. And if that's the case, then, you know, then that's just a matter of
C10.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Ye Rock Hawkins, this is a very good point. So I haven't seen the measurements, so I don't know if it's been majorly improved, but if there are color space gamut measurements out there, it's a disappointment that it hasn't been majorly improved in the Evo, and it just appears to be the limitation of the current color filter combination with OLED technology. It probably has hit its ceiling for color gamut for an OLED. So I don't think we're going to get a lot more out of the OLED. Now, possibly on the Sony A90J or the Panasonic might push more volume because it gets brighter without losing the color. It doesn't just is bright white light. So we'll see with the A90J once those arting measurements come out. But on the G1 to C1, oh, I'm a little disappointed that the color volume hasn't been majorly improved myself. And I don't know if you've seen this on any of your samples, Brandon. So when I had the 900, well, I still have it, but the 900 TS, when I pushed it to its brightest setting at 50 brightness, right, I lose color in the peak specular highlights. I end up bringing it down to, on the Samsung setting, brightness to around 35. At 35, I maintain all my color, but then it ends up being no brighter than the Sony A9G. So I was like, wait a minute, I can go brighter, but I'm losing color detail. And that was my biggest disappointment with last year's 900 TS is on the one hand, they're promoting as, oh, this bright TV. But then if you want color accuracy where you have all the color, you're at a Sony A9G level brightness. And I'm hoping the QN90A doesn't have that issue.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, you see, on only certain movies, I think I used The Greatest Showman because there's so much color in the middle of that bright scenes, right? And you're able to see, wait, there's supposed to be more yellow in there. And then on the 900 TS, all the yellow is gone. It's just white light. But then if you take it down to 33, 34, suddenly it's all back.
I know we got a few people in here that are pretty technical that I have in my comments, so I'm sure they can answer these questions, some of them better than me. I like learning as much on YouTube as anyone else, so I'm not one to speak out of something I don't know about, so I have to defer to your knowledge there.
Oh, gained over close inspection. Some people call it pixel peeping, but when you're paying a premium, you want to know the differences, right? Yeah. Will a 77-inch C1 be less bright than a 65-inch C1? So perceptually, the 77-inch C1 will appear more bright because it's a larger area. So this is how brightness works. If you have a larger area putting out the same amount of lumens, the same amount of light per pixel as a smaller area, it will just be brighter and a larger TV. So that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe too bright for people. Not
to mention, that's another 30 to 40% surface area difference too. So you got a much bigger TV. I know they look like 12-inch TV doesn't seem like much, but that is it's a huge upsize in sale or in size there.
Okay, here we go.
Some of these comments are hilarious in here. People are just having random conversations, having side conversations. It's funny.
And of course, I have to put this up. Hey, is the color volume improved? You're just like, I don't know. I'll have to check later.
I just install TVs, man. I'm just joking.
You do installer. And you know what? I just have fun looking at the differences between TVs, because ultimately it's fun to talk about, but when people actually reach out to me to get TV buying advice, I'm like, look, you're not going to notice some of these differences that I bring up, because some people want to know, But if it's $500 more to get that extra pixel difference, it's not. You're not even going to see it in most content, right?
Yeah, man.
And I'm often wrong too, just so you guys know.
Some of the questions I get are like, I end up talking about remotes and being like, I hate this TV because of this stupid remote, man. So, you know, there's things that we all can figure out. We bring all different kinds of experiences to the table.
Yep. All right, Urfi Grias, thank you for your continued support. This goes to what we're talking about. If he gets a C10, will he have FOMO for the C1? You can't. If you get the C1, will you get FOMO for the C2 or the G1, right? At some point, you have to accept that you got a great deal at $2,000 because there's always going to be something better 2 years from now. Forget every year. Every 3 years, the improvement is actually maybe noticeable, right? So the C10 is a great TV in a vacuum. I have the C10. I watch it all the time. And I only notice differences when I put up another TV. Like, you have a bunch of TVs now. Like, when you watch the C10, do you ever say, man, I should be watching the A90J?
It's the funny thing. Like, if anything, no, I don't. When I'm watching the C10, I'm like, this is the best TV I've ever had. And then I have the A8H too, which is in my bedroom, but that's a 55-inch. And some of that stuff we were talking about last week with Brian is like, I think it's the reason that it's like doesn't look as good to me is because it's further away and it's smaller, not because it's not as good. Because when you put them up to each other, I had rated the 8H just slightly better. But that's the one that I typically am like, man, I just wish that had a little more gusto. Whereas the C10, I feel like we watch that in the living room, watch movies, we watch games, everything, football games, all that. It's a fantastic TV, fantastic all the way around. There's no reason you should have FOMO if you buy the C10. Just get it and don't look back because it's better than 95% of other TVs.
And to emphasize that point, had the Vizio have better quality control for others, now mine's fine, but other people complain, so I'm going to have to vicariously suggest be careful. The Vizio OLED is a good TV. Like, I watch, I'm like, this is not a bad TV. Now, forget the gaming features that are broken and the rebooting issues and everything, right? But it looks good. That's what an OLED does. And if the Vizio was the TV I had, the OLED, I'd be fine with it because it looks great in a dark room. So yeah, no FOMO for anything other above the C10 unless there are specific features you're needing that it's missing. Okay, here we have, I want a bright and vivid QLED. Is there any reason to get the new mini LED Samsung TVs over the QN90T? So I'll start with this because the Q90T really upsets me. This is a Q80R that they repackaged the Q90T with a slightly better processor, but ultimately its darkroom performance is very similar to the Q80R. The question is, should you get the mini LED over the Q90R if that's what you have? And my answer right now is I don't have the Q90R side by side, but as I'm watching it, I'm going through the reviews and content. It looks great, and its darkroom performance actually looks pretty good. I haven't compared it with OLED yet, but I can tell you that the Q90T does have a little bit of blooming, and this TV, the QN90A, better contrast the way we normally use it with standard or high dimming zones on, and deeper blacks on the QN90A. So what are your thoughts about the mini LED versus the Q90T?
No, I agree with you. The things that I think that were similar and reasons for concern, again, were the more of like the blooming off angle and really the dirty screen effect kind of situation. So I have taken your word for it in Value Electronics that it's brighter TV, and it's a bright TV. It's a good TV. So I think I agree with you on that for sure. About the QN90A, I like that.
Stop the FOMO. Thank you, Desert Fisherman, for that. So yes. And here he thinks it does fine in dark rooms. So there you go. Just dial in the settings, maybe set up the gammas and so forth. But some people find the 950H fine in a dark room. And for many people, if you don't have a TV next to it, more often than not, you're not going to notice that there's a better TV out there. And the issue with a lot of you is when I do comparisons, I have these 3-4 TVs next to each other, then you see the differences, but that's an absolute difference compared to something else. But if it's the only TV you have and your last TV was 5 years old, the 950H kills it. I think.
Yeah, and I think the X950H is fine for a dark room. I don't think I said it wasn't good in a dark room. I just was saying that when you have it in a dark room, like I had it, when I replaced an OLED with that TV, some of the things that I noticed were when we were watching like HDR movies, and it was brighter toward the top, then up above in that widescreen area, it was all lit up. And it's like, so that's just things that I notice. I think it's great. I think the X900 or the X950H is a great TV in general. But you're just a little fatter. It's a little, it's a good TV. I have no problem with it at all. So yeah, I agree with you on that comment. I'm not trying to create FOMO. I think, like you said, we're just trying to find the absolute differences, and people want to, if we don't tell you guys exactly what those absolute differences are, then we get destroyed in the comments by people that tell us those differences. So we really can't win on either end. We're going to, we're going to hear it on either end. So we're just trying to like give you those differences, and then you should make a good decision.
And to jump on that, a lot of times it's value, right? So let's say A950H, he says darkroom is fine, but for the same price, the Hisense H9G might have a better darkroom, and that's what people want to hear is, okay, my budget is a 950H, but how close can I get for $400 less? So oftentimes that discussion ends up with a TV that may have better this, but weaker that. Here we have, thank you again, Earthgethy Grius. Chance of burning C10 if you game 10 hours a day. Depends on what you're gaming. Same thing. I did a video on this a bit back, and there are certain games that definitely puts you at risk. And for example, FIFA, right? I don't know if the newer FIFAs have addressed this, but the older FIFAs had persistent logos and scoring boards, and that left a persistent image. And so yes, definitely depends on the game. So if you play in a game where all the persistent images move around or they are translucent, they're not super bright, you should be okay. But if it's a game where it's very bright and it doesn't go anywhere, like those HUD displays that are too bright all the time and you can't change the setting to lower it or make it more translucent, you might have a risk of burn-in. Those are my thoughts.
My thoughts are, if you're gaming for 10 hours a day, does your butt hurt sitting like that, man? Because I edit videos for 10 hours a day, and that is tiring. It's hard to do. I guess when you're gaming, it's a little more fun. So I know a lot of people game, and I'm just messing around, but I'll have to ask my son about that, about the gaming. We just play at will with everything on our TV, like full abuse. Just I actually want something bad to happen so then I can test LG's like quality. I want to see how good the customer service is. I'm not going to take a baseball bat to it, but we're going to keep working it hard and see what we can happen.
Hey, Sean, this question, I had to bring it up because not only did he mention your name, but he mentioned something that we talked about earlier in the show, which is that grid. So what did you say? How does he solve the grid issue if he hasn't tried it yet, assuming he hasn't tried it?
So this is what I got from the Ninjician here. I don't know if he's still in here.
Thank you, Ninjician, for that.
Ninjician hooked me up. So he said, run a refresh. Some people had said, you got to let the TV have its 4 hours of viewing and then let it do its own thing. But I actually pushed it and I went in and did the pixel refresh it myself. Let it do it for an hour. It came back on still a little bit. It actually helped the first one. The first time I did it, it helped a little. So I let it run another hour or two. I refreshed it again. And for the most part, the screen is a lot cleaner. And it's because it's not the same thing as like the dirty screen effect. It's not like blotchiness and like an LED. This is just that very light grid banding that, you can't, it does get better over time. Absolutely. And initial impressions, $1,500 more. That's we were talking about. That's tough, man. I can't make
you had issues on your A90J. It wasn't like it was for free.
Yeah,
right?
I had the same thing and actually took my back. But here's the thing. I have the benefit of going into people's houses sometimes when I see what TV they have. And then I can just tell by how big their house is if they can afford that A90J. So that's a little easier. You'd have to send me he has to send me a picture of his house, and then I can tell him if it's worth $1,500 more.
Right. Are you guys in La Jolla in the mountains? Okay, I know where you are.
Yeah, you on Mount Soledad, and
I was hiking over there. I love La Jolla, man. You're in the right place at the right time.
It's great. I love going up in La Jolla. I love going over the hill over Mount Soledad. I like going up by the cross and looking east. Did you get to go up there by the cross or not?
We were going to do a early morning walk, and I think they open after 10. So, but
yeah. It's
I'm
great
happy
though.
to ask you exactly how to get to that part of the hike. Gamer torn between the C1, the QN90A. So if you're a gamer, I'm going to have to say C1 is trouble-free gaming. So if you're a serious gamer and you need 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, you need VR to work on most things, PC, consoles, anything that's coming out in the future, LG in general has shown that they are continuing to improve any issues on their game features. Samsung, it's like the E-Arc. They're walking away from that now. So if you need a company to step in and try to update some of these features, I trust LG to do it more than anyone else if it comes to gaming features. So I'd go with the C1 just based on that. Well, what are your thoughts on his? He's torn C1 or QN90A.
Well, I think that I get a lot of questions about this too. And when I say, I agree C1, then a lot of people are like, well, I'm concerned about the burn-in. And then, then you talk about the QN90A and you say no burn-in. And then they're like, but I see some blooming in game mode because it's, so I think that ends up being a personal preference. You have the brighter screen, no burn-in versus, perfect black contrast, all that. And, like you said, more connectivity. I absolutely agree. C1 or, LG in general, just snap right into, into the different modes, never have problems with the Dolby Vision or HDR or gaming or anything. It connects to everything. Like anything you can feed into it, it works great with. And even when you connect like the splitters that I have to use to, put all these different TVs up, the LG is always like, boom, right into place. Like any kind of signal you send it takes. And so, yeah, I do like that for gaming in the same respect because it's really good with the different resolutions.
Yep. Agreed. And well, so this goes to our other conversation when there's only $300 separating the two. And first of all, if you're going to hang it up on the wall anyway, the G1 is a great one for an extra $300. Now, if you need a stand or you don't want to go through the trouble of buying a stand or you need more options, then maybe save a little with the C1. I'd go with the G1 just because it's only a few $100s more and I mount most of my TVs anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter in a dark room. They're both the same kind of, they're both going to be great in a dark room. But a lot of people get the C1 or the C10 and they don't understand that it's not going to be that glass thin up against the wall when they mount it. They think that it's going to be flatter than it is, especially when you wall mount it and you have a mount that sticks out a couple, 3 inches. Then you have a beautiful OLED that's 5 inches off your wall and it doesn't look quite at what they think it is going to look like. On a stand, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to go stand, then, the C1 or get the feet for the G1. But if you want to wall mount it, that G1 is like 3/4 inch thick. It looks beautiful on the wall.
Yep. Agreed. And just quick announcement. So I didn't realize almost 4:30. How about we close it out? 10 minutes? Are you okay?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And so we have a question from Victor Lindstrom. C1 versus A80J for movies and motorsports. So, haven't seen the A80J. I will get the C1, but not until the end of the month. But I can tell you this, though. If you're not gaming, the C1, a lot of its investment and cost goes into making sure the gaming works well. Sony puts its money elsewhere, whether it's motion processing, whatever it is. So the A80J will probably continue to be a great movie watching, motion, color accuracy, all that stuff. So I would choose the A80J based on that history, not having seen it in person yet. But the C1 is a great TV. But if you're not gaming, you're kind of putting a lot of that performance and price on the table. So what are your thoughts?
You're on point there. Not much else to say. I think the C1 can be I think it's just fine for movies too. So if you're kind of combination of all these different things, the C1's just fine. But like you said, I'm interested to see that. I haven't seen the A8J obviously either, but I wonder how close it'll be to the A90J. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
So I just had to put this up, not because I'm going to address it, because I don't want to feed the fire, but every channel has its own theme. My theme is to focus on the TVs, but it's always about the character and the people, right? So we all have our approach to making our channels grow, and that's his approach, and I'm fine with that. I honestly couldn't tell you because I've never asked him, and he mentions everyone, not just me. Has he mentioned you, Brandon?
Yeah, no, I always say to people that comment on any other people, like there's room for everyone to do their own thing. You know, I have no interest in it ever getting into it with other people, especially creators. I like to have people create their own content. So yeah, I think it's just, I think it's good that a lot of people in general are interested in making sure that people are, that we have the information we need. So I think there's always people that want to, make sure everyone's doing things or doing, being accurate and doing their best. But I just think that people got to let people do their own thing, Yeah. I'm doing my own thing. You're doing your own thing. And that is what it is.
And oftentimes, and I think I was talking about this with Brian Whisper Status earlier, half the time we're entertainers. We keep people company. They just have our stuff playing and they just want to hear someone talk. And I keep that in mind as well, because more often than not, we are personalities that are a bit different from what they have in their lives as well. And they get to hear a different voice. So we try to add to that. Will the grid refresh get rid of burn-in the LG? Unfortunately, burn-in is permanent. Otherwise, it's just image retention. So a lot of people may not know the difference, but burn-in is permanent. That's it. You're done. It's never going to go away. If it goes away, it's image retention. So refreshing, just changing the content, image retention does disappear after a while. But if it's burn-in and it's real burn-in, that means you're never going to get rid of it.
To your point about me hanging around for a little bit, I didn't get to mention, my wife loves this when you ask me to come on, because this gives her like an instant, like I'm taking a nap situation here on a Saturday. So
you both.
You're like her best friend now.
Hey, question for you, be the installer. What do you think of heat? Let's see. Heat on wall hung TVs than on tabletops. Have you seen that to be an issue or anything like that?
No, I haven't seen it. It doesn't matter for wall-mounted TVs. None of the TV wall mounts get that tight to the wall that there's a problem like that. I do get people that ask me to hang TVs over fireplaces all the time, and so that it would be interesting to know more about that from people that that kind of measure the heat of OLED panels over fireplace and see if that much heat comes up over the mantle to cause a problem. I know I've seen some people put candles on their mantle and actually melt their OLED screen, so that's not good. But no, I actually have Apple TVs and a power surge protector, and I've had that strapped on the back of my LG C10 for a year now, and it hasn't caused any problems. It's not hot or anything, but it's sitting above the air vent, on the LG. And like even the Sony A90J doesn't have that air vent coming up. There's no I'm concerned. I am a little concerned, I'll be honest, with that, the heat sink on that A90J. That TV gets hot. It gets very warm in the front. So, I think it's more just about what the TV does, because the H9G, for example, gets pretty hot for an LED TV versus the Sonys that don't get as hot. And this A90J gets really, the screen gets quite warm, and none of my other OLEDs have gotten warm to the touch like that before. But I don't think it makes a difference on the wall, no. That
makes sense. This question pushes it to another level, not just C1 versus C10. How about C1 versus C9? So this is actually something Technodad, otherwise known as Chana, has been debating. He has the E9, and he's one of those lucky few that had an E9 where the peak brightness was like almost 850. Now the C1, I don't even think it gets to 850, maybe. And so if he's upgrading, it would be for better processing, this, that, and the other. But he loves his E9, and he reviews TVs as well. And he's saying, yeah, but everyone wants me to get the C1 to review and so forth. And that's the dilemma. His E9 looks great. And if he wasn't doing this for a living, he would not upgrade. So maybe that could answer your question. What are your thoughts about going from a C9 to a C1?
I just think that if you got a good place to put the C9, then, that's good on you to be able to afford two TVs, but there's just I don't think that there's much difference. They both had 4K 120 for the last 3 years, have the eARC. You can connect anything to either of the TVs. So what are you going to gain for the difference? Maybe, I don't even know if it's brighter. I know the C9 was a little brighter than the C10, wasn't it? So,
yep.
I don't think it's going to be an upgrade besides the processor, maybe the WebOS difference.
Right. How old am I? How about this? I used to watch Laverne and Shirley when I was a kid. That hopefully doesn't date me too much.
How old are you? That's funny. People think I don't have hair. That's pretty funny too. I have to like, I do my videos with a hat on, so they don't think I have hair.
Right. Let me see. What we are answer this. What TV recommend for movies and sports? OLED. I'm with. I watch TVs in a darker room. I go OLED. Almost any OLED would be fine. Sony, especially for motion. I like Sony motion, and yeah, that's kind of like my thing.
Yeah, I think you're the guy that really liked the X950H. There you go. Get that one in a bright room. X950H for movies and sports. There you go. That's a great TV for that.
I cannot agree more. Hardcore gaming 2021, C1, G1, or Sony OLED model. Hardcore gaming, I'd go G1 just because it's only $300 more. Sony, it doesn't have gaming. We don't even know if it comes with VRR out of the box. Oh, no, it doesn't. So we don't know when VRR is coming. And if that's important to you, it's a no-brainer because you're a hardcore gamer. Don't even consider the Sony. You'll just be heartbroken waiting and talking and spending all day on the forums arguing.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
My phone OLED, it's 1500, there's no burn-in. Let me tell you, my friend, Samsung has a lot of burn-in issues on their phone. You may not notice it, but the RGB OLED on the Samsungs, it's no different than anything else. The RGB OLEDs are brighter naturally than the color filter WOLEDs that LG uses. And Samsung would love to take this RGB phone OLED to a TV, but it could never solve burn-in. That's why you don't see Samsung's RGB OLED on your TV because of burn-in. But yeah, it's great that your phone doesn't have it though. So that's good.
I have like 15 Samsung phones in my house right now.
Oh, do you have them an OLED?
I don't know. No, I have no idea, to be honest.
Never checked, right? Yeah.
I have so many. Yeah, I used to actually work for T-Mobile in New York City. I used to work in their corporate office selling phones and Blackberries to corporate America. It was a great job. I love that. Out of college, living in New York in a sales job. Fantastic.
Corey, thank you. Welcome back. Are any new TV remotes, Sony especially, finally backlit? I think the A90J is backlit, right?
Yeah. I mean, if there's one reason to buy a $4,000 TV, it is the backlit remote. I mean, the remote's pretty awesome. We love that remote, except that it's also, I don't know, the brushed metal part of it is unnecessary because it's freezing. So when when I'm holding the remote or the remote falls down and it touches your back at night, it's really cold. But no, it's like an icicle because that metal retains the cold air. But fantastic remote. The remote is still big, but having it backlit is a huge improvement, and it looks really good. It's got like blue buttons, and it's got some of the white buttons like the Disney Plus and all that. It's got a little like Samsung dirty screen effect on the glow to them. They're not perfectly bright, but it's a really nice remote. And I'm just messing around with that.
If there's any reason to pay an extra $3,000 or $2,000,
right?
It's a remote, right?
The remote.
And I have to give Samsung a shout out. How long did this take to happen? But a solar powered remote. Come on. Was not Mr. Obvious at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, the USB-C, I saw that on the Apple TV remote, but that's made of glass. So I dropped one of those on a person's floor and it shattered the remote. So that was a pain in the butt. But that remote is nice. Yeah, it's a great remote, and having it USB-C and having it have that light is awesome. It's pretty cool. Pretty nice.
Have you ever had a problem with fan noise in any of your TVs? Honestly, I've never noticed a fan noise, but maybe I just have bad hearing. I never thought it was a thing.
I have to say, Mr. Hawkins out there, he's talking about the Magic Remote. I agree. I'm not a huge fan of the old Magic Remotes either, but the new remote looks a little better on the C1. That is an upgrade too, just so you know. The old LG remotes, the center button on it, it's got a huge giant clicking wheel on it. And the new one is much smaller and it clicks down a lot easier without accidentally scrolling down 5 lines. So the remote's improved. It's not a dramatic improvement, but it's definitely better.
A90J getting discounts when? So Master Series OLED or Master Series anything from Sony takes a while to get a discount. You might get lucky Black Friday, maybe a couple $100 off, but they're not going to be significant. So if you need a couple hundred off, I wait till Black Friday. Like A9G, perfect example. The thing is still darn expensive, and it's almost 3 years old now. So I don't expect discounts this year from the A90J, unfortunately. Not more than 100 or 200, but I could be wrong. I hope to be wrong.
Yeah, I had that same, from what I understand of how they're selling and how quickly they're selling, I don't think it's going to be discounted much. Maybe just to be competitive with the G1, maybe, I don't know, but if they had to be.
So Earthy Grease, good question. Technically, their Square Trade does not officially cover burn-in. However, and this is what I've learned from Robert Zone at Value Electronics, when you call either LG or Costco, whoever, to make a claim of warranty, don't call it burn-in. Say, I got this dirty spot, don't know what the hell it is, I need a new TV. You say that and never ever mention the word burn-in, they're stuck. Because they don't want to say burn-in and you don't say burn-in, then there is an issue with the panel, right? So just call it, hey, my panel's broken. I don't know what this is. And then you're done. But if you say, hey, I got a burn-in, only Geek Squad in the USA, I think Geek Squad Canada, I've been told, doesn't cover burn-in either. But that's someone from Canada telling me that. In the US, Geek Squad is the only warranty that openly says we cover burn-in, but no one else does. So just something to keep in mind, if you do get burn-in and you're still within warranty, never mention that word. So thank you for that question. I didn't get to bring that up.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
They sell a lot of those TVs.
Yeah, no kidding. A9G or LG C10 for movie watching? I have both. I do like the A9G mostly for its motion. The C10, technically you can get it calibrated to be so close to the A9G, but the motion, you cannot fix it on the C10. So the A9G, to me, still has better motion where soap opera, if you don't like soap opera and you want to reduce it as much as possible, that's when the A9G looks better than the C10. But if you are okay with soap opera, you embrace soap opera, then they both pretty much looks the same. So get the cheaper TV. Have you ever had the A9G?
No, I haven't had the A9G. I have the A8H. I think they're pretty similar for the most part.
Better A9G, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's spot on what you said. I mean, like again, I don't mind a little bit of motion, so a little bit of motion interpolation. So I can get the C10 to where we are all comfortable watching it. There is a little bit of judder. It's not quite as good as the A8H. You're right. It's right on there. The C10's a little brighter. Sometimes when I feel like you're watching the Sony OLEDs, I feel like in some of the other modes that they are in, like if you put it in a darker cinema type mode, it doesn't look, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of punch in it. So I think that the C10, just with the saturation and the colors, it's a little bit, gives you a little bit more. I like that kind of look, so that's just a personal thing.
I have to agree with you. So I was watching Godzilla, King of Monsters, and that's when I saw that the C10 takes the peak brightness up a notch over the A9G, but then I lost a little bit of color detail. But from 6 or 7 feet away, I'm like, okay, I do appreciate the brightness, but I noticed a slightly less color, and that's like creator's intent. The color's supposed to be there, but I gotta say it's an action movie. I went with the brighter color has the impact. So you guys will have to decide in those movies where the HDR impact is huge. The C10 doesn't mind clipping a little to give you that brightness, whereas the Sony will hold back. That's more of a movie theater experience. You're not going to get the same level of HDR in movie theater either. So Ehab has a good question. PS5 can't decide between Q80A, which is the 2021 IPS version of the Samsung, the Q80T, last year's VA full array local dimming, and the Nano 90. So Nano 90 is the better gaming TV than either of those, but it won't get as bright as either one. You have to decide how important is VRR, because PS5 doesn't even have VRR yet. I think the PS5 will look fine on any 3 TVs. That's in my review of the PS5. That's why I chose it. It's easier for the consumer to take the PS5 and plug it into anything and then believe that, oh, hey, it works well. Series X has so many great options that you're constantly looking for the right TV with all the features. So if I have a PS5, I choose the better looking TV. And in that group, I'd probably go with a Q80T because it's a VA panel. And then just disable its VRR function, which apparently doesn't work well anyway. Or what would you choose between those three for PS5?
I thought you were going somewhere else with it, but then you ended up landing right where I was gonna, already say. The Q80T is a great all-around TV. It's a good price. It's a good TV. It's almost as bright as a Q90T. It has, doesn't have many of the side effects, or it has similar downsides. But I think on average, some people were saying that the Q80T was a little cleaner screen than the Q90T. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I had a lot of customers that had the Q80T and were very happy with it.
Yeah. Plasma to OLED in brights and blacks. The OLED will blow it away with HDR content for sure, and the OLED gets blacker and brighter. It's just a next generation technology. Motion is the only thing that people complain about and wish they had plasma for the motion, and we're talking movie motion type stuff. So yeah, I'd have to go with an OLED as a great upgrade. And you mentioned that earlier. It's just a lot of people come back and they question whether they're going to like the OLED, and then they come back and they tell me, "Oh my God, it's so awesome." So yeah, I think people get that in their head that nothing's going to be as good as their old plasma in any manner, and they're talking about with streaks on it and part of it's not lit anymore, and then they get an OLED, and it's a lot better than people think. A lot of these TVs are really nice. Vertical banding. So the question is, it goes to where the source of vertical banding is. If the vertical banding is the actual LCD layer, so and this affects OLEDs as well, right? So OLED has vertical banding. It's part of the manufacturing issues, however it's laid up, whether it's an LCD TV or an OLED. Some TVs have it and some don't. And so it's the tolerance. They're not going to get rid of every TV that has a little bit of vertical banding. Then your TVs would be too expensive. So instead, they lower the tolerance and sell as many TVs as possible, and then just replace the ones that have it. That ends up being cheaper because some people don't notice it. So will new glass TVs get rid of vertical banding? I don't know what the new glass TVs are, but I doubt it, because there is always some kind of QC issue with all manufacturing, even if it's 5%. If you're in that 5%, you're going to suffer something, whether it's vertical banding or vignetting or whatever. So until I see these new glass TVs, I'm going to say the answer is no, because I don't think we've ever gotten rid of vertical banding since the LCD TV / OLED era. But some TVs are great. So it's panel lottery. You'll never get rid of it completely. It's always, a percentage of tolerances that manufacturing will allow. And then you end up with it.
I think you touched on pretty much everything I could say there.
Well, you have the A90J. Here's a man that bought a $4,000 TV and still had to return it because of vertical banding. It happens to everyone, even Sony's best.
Yeah, I was interested. I was wondering. It was interesting to me if they had LG's displays, if they've had some quality control issues, or if they've opened their new plant, and if there's different kind of standards that are coming across, or if they're trying to save some money somewhere, or if Sony is, or both companies seem to have that same kind of grid-like banding. I've heard people say it on the C10, the C1, the A90J. I've heard. I never saw that before this year. I didn't really see that.
That's a good point. I have to say that's the first time also I've heard from my viewers about grid. We heard vertical banding, but what's this grid-like pattern? And I'm fortunate that my C10 doesn't have it, but enough people have it and have tweeted me about it. Like, okay, this appears to be an issue. LG won't even recognize it as an issue at all. So eventually, I'm sure they will. But it's all coming from the same OLED factory. LG Display is the only source of OLED for the world as far as TVs are concerned. So as long as LG Display continues to produce TVs with this issue for themselves, everyone else is going to have it too. Shuva Raman, thank you so much. How inferior is the motion and upscaling on the C10 versus the A8H? He has the C10, but I want to know how inferior it is to the A8H. You want FOMO. So I thought the motion upscaling on the C10 is fine. I didn't think it was an issue, but I don't have the A8H to tell you that the A8H is that much better. What are your thoughts?
Well, I did a couple of videos just showing different scenes and different, I did an OLED battle where I put all three of these I put the LG C10, the 8H, and the Vizio OLED on the wall, and, did all the same, had all the same content, and went through that. I didn't find it dramatically better, but I did find I did find the 8H a little sharper when you're, 6 feet away. The 8H was a little more sharp, and it did have less black crush. So I mean that, the upscaling, I just think in general the AH is a little better. And you, as you said, with the movie watching, it's smoother motion. So I don't think it's much difference. Again, if you don't have the two next to each other, you probably won't even notice. So it just depends on what brand of TV you like, and if gaming is involved, that might help your decision. But those TVs are like right at the same level at the top of their game.
Yeah, and YE Rock Hawkins. So can you tell us if you tried Brandon's solution with a pixel refresh? Because I know this is now suddenly a thing. It helped him, right? It helped you. It went away. Try it.
And I think he heard me. I think he heard me say that because he had mentioned Ninjition as well. Okay. So yeah, and I think I don't have any grid pattern on the TV at all. So it helped. It's not there any longer. So I had it from 5% up to like 30%. I kept watching it and looking and trying to find it. After I had done that refresh a couple times, I couldn't find it any longer. So that's my opinion. I was right up on it. I kind of wish I would have done that with the A90J at first, the one that I had issues with, to see if that would have helped at that one too. But
yeah,
that one had that 1/3 left of the panel that was like the entire way down from 12 feet away. I could see that line and how that the left side of the screen was darker than the right side of the screen. So that I don't know if I would have been able to knock all that out with it.
This is a good question. 65-inch versus 70-inch. So the larger TVs generally have more issues with dirty screen, uniformity, grid patterns, right? The larger the TV is, the more likely you're going to lose the panel lottery when it comes to uniformity issues. So if you get a larger TV, oftentimes you might want to upgrade to a higher end one like a Sony or the Master Series, whatever, only because larger OLEDs, well, if you guys follow Whisper Status 74, Brian, he was on an exchange extravaganza. He went through like 4 77-inch C10s, and he gave up and is getting the G1 because he was being told that 77-inch G1 will have better uniformity. So we'll see if that plays out, because he will have a G1, but the same should hold here. The A80J is the less expensive Sony, so it will have less QC compared to the A90J, but A90J is going to be 83 inches, way too expensive. So what have been your experience with the larger size TVs when it comes to these things, Brandon?
I think I've had good, I don't look in like detail everyone's TVs when I'm at their homes, but as much, I don't get as much time as people might think. Like people are like, oh, get all the settings done for them and all that. I don't have time for that, man. You can't make money setting people's TVs up like that. Yeah. Anyways, but the 77-inch C10s, a lot of them looked amazing. They're really big, large, nice TVs. And I would get, if you have the room and I think people, is it worth the cost? Again, you have to look at the cost. You're getting like 35% more screen size. So that price, what is that going from like, what is it? 2,800 up to 4,800. Is that the difference? Somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. You're paying almost like you're paying like a 40 or 45% increase in price, 40%. So you're getting about the same real estate per dollar. So it's,
and that goes to actually the number one upgrade.
Oh, 6 feet away. Sorry, I didn't see the 6 feet away. 6 feet away.
That's nice, actually. I
sorry. I
like 27-inch at 6 feet. And I'll tell you this, guys, the best upgrade is to increase the size of your TV. So if you're going to spend $2,000 on something better, like, oh, I want to get this new technology, whatever. If it's to get a bigger TV, that would be the best reason to upgrade, let's say from I don't know, it's not even an upgrade, but it's just a bigger TV. It's a whole different experience. And at 6 feet away, 27 inches, I don't know, I mean, maybe that's too big.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, that's like, you could save the money from 6 feet away if you wanted to, but the 77 is going to look pretty awesome. You'd be like in a movie theater with that thing.
A90J has worse motion than the A8H. I don't know. You have both. Did you notice any differences in motion?
I don't think it's worse, but I don't think it's dramatically better either. So, I mean, that's something I noticed. I've had a few, I have a little FOMO with the A90J. I have, I definitely, ratings had a little thing where they're showing the peak brightness at like 680 nits. I don't know if I buy that. It does look brighter in every mode. It looked brighter than the 8H, but I lost that comment now. I get off track there and I lose my comment. Oh, what was the last part of that he said?
The 6 feet away?
Oh, the 6 feet away. No, the other one that you just said. Yeah, I lost it.
No, now I'm getting old now. I moved on.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just got off track for a minute. I'm losing my mind here.
A90J motion is worse than the A8H.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right. No, it's not worse. I don't think it's worse. But it's just, I think people are putting a lot of pressure on the TV for its price. And I think that the processor is pretty good. It looks cool. It looks great. And they're a lot of things are really the highlights look really good. And overall, it's a better viewing experience from someone that really likes OLEDs. I noticed the difference, and I'm watching movies and shows, and I'm like, it's pretty impressive, but it's very expensive. So that is always this really tough, like you're on a line of like price versus benefits, and the diminishing returns comes into effect when you start thinking about how much these cost. But I don't think it's a downgrade in any manner. No, it's an upgrade for sure.
One of the things that I think is important about that comment is, so the motion is so close to be arguably better on the older TV. Definitely go out there and shop for the older TV. Now you're getting your money's worth on a TV that's, maybe a year older, but it's hugely discounted. Soundbars. Do we know about soundbars? If so, what soundbars recommend for the LG G10? So not because it's the LG G10. What soundbars do you recommend? I'm only starting to get into soundbars this year, so I cannot comment yet. What are your comments about soundbars?
Well, a lot of people would ask, like, you're going to have that looking like a Samsung frame type, like a picture frame on the wall. So a soundbar is going to make that look a little different. It's not going to be quite as like clean looking on the wall, but I like, just because of the ease and the quality, I like the Sonos ones, the Sonos Arc. If that's a 65 or bigger, the Sonos Arc might look good. They do have it in white. I don't know. It depends. I'm not cool enough to have a white soundbar, but the black Sonos Arc is pretty cool. The Sonos Beam is going to look a little weird. It's kind of squatty and short and sticks out kind of far because that TV is so tight to the wall. I think that would be a good one. And some of the LG soundbars are actually not built well either. They're not really built to go underneath a TV like that. So I think he's going to have to go to a store and check out some of these soundbars and see what looks good that you could wall mount if he's going to have that on the wall.
Agreed. And another thing for you guys to remember is these soundbars are improving every year. 1 year they're going to add room optimization, room correction, which I think is very important because it allows the soundbar to give you that virtual dimensional feel if the room optimization is correct. And that's going to be added every year. So with soundbars, we're not at peak soundbar yet, but they're very affordable. Like $100 soundbar today is so much better than a $100 soundbar 2 years ago. So with soundbars, they're just constantly getting better. And almost everyone has some good, I don't think there are any terrible soundbars anymore. I mean, for like $200.
I have two, well, now I only use one of them, but I have a Samsung 3-channel soundbar that was like $250 from 3 or 4 years ago. And that thing still is fantastic in our room. It provides better sound than any TV, even the A90J. I had the A90J on. The sound is great, but it's not nearly as good as having like a dedicated 3.1 with the sub there that, even a low end Samsung soundbar like that sounds better than the A90J speaker system does.
Thanks, Brad. I saw that, and you just have to type it directly into your super chat. I had to figure that out too, so you're not the only one. Looking at the C10, the X95J. So you have two completely different technologies, and we kind of talked about this. It's OLED versus QLED all over, or OLED versus non-OLED all over again. In a dark room, I'd go with the C10 because OLED looks best in a dark room. The blacks look blacker than the X95J could look, but in a brighter room, then the X95J will definitely get brighter than the C10, and you might want that impact. So, but if you're gaming, then it goes back to the C10. The C10 is still one of the best gaming TVs you can get. So if you're just watching movies in a bright room, I'd go the X95J, but if your room is dim or moderately lit, or there's any gaming involved, I'd go with the C10. But which would you choose?
I go back to the OLED versus QLED. I think that plays as much of a role, like the conditions play as much as a role as anything else when it comes to OLED versus QLED. So I'm with you on that. It would have to be a pretty bright room for me to not want to get the good deal on the C10.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. My kind of guy. My house does not have room for a sound bar, but he wants a TV with the best audio system. I have to say, I'm listening to the QN90A. I'm pretty impressed with its audio system, but I think generally speaking, the TVs are as good as you're going to get with audio, unless they're going to add more louder speakers to the TV, which I think we're hitting the limits of how loud you can go on the TV. Do you have any personal preferences for audio in a TV?
Sorry, my headphone went out. I was trying to get repeat the question again, if you could.
TV audio, the native audio in a TV. Do you have any preferences? Like, was there any TV model or brand that made you say, "Wow, this is pretty good audio in a TV"?
Well, I mean, the LG OLEDs have pretty good sound because they bounce off that stand, but when you take that stand off, then it deteriorates. I think that the Sony OLEDs, how it comes out from the screen, is pretty nice. It gives you the most like immersion. You kind of like feel the sound around you, and the bass is pretty good. Again, if you're not too far away, but yeah, I would say those OLEDs are probably the best for the most part. With all the TVs having their speakers now kind of facing downward or behind, it's really tough to have good quality sound come out of a TV.
Here's a good question. Without HDR, right? We're not talking peak brightness anymore. What a SDR comparing the A90J to the C1. Did you see a difference if you had a chance to look at that?
I haven't had a chance to compare them directly from what I feel like from watching both of them. I feel like the A90J has an advantage. Yes, it's brighter. And it does do that processing where it does highlight specific areas and skin tones and other different, commercial, you can see it in logos and in skin tones. They kind of push the brightness. So skin tones look more realistic and more, they look more like an LED, where if you have a bright LED, you can see like a little more color come through the skin. And I think that that's the case with the A90J. It looks a little better like that, but it's not super dramatic. I think that, the C1 would be fine too. They both look really good.
So Phil82, this question is a constant theme today. We are in a C10 love-in today. So if you can't figure it out, we think the C10 for the current pricing, $2,000. $500 is not worth that premium. Now, if your budget's $2,500 anyway, yeah, go ahead and get the C1, right? But if you truly want to save $500, now I don't have the C1 yet, but based on what B is saying, I agree with him. I don't see $500 more worth of stuff in it, although there may be some differences.
You could also get a C10 with the 5-year warranty for that price too. There you go.
There you go. Extended warranty. Now you have no burn-in problems. That's more than the C1 with burn-in, right? Abuse the hell out of it.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Yeah, but yeah, at these prices, guys. Now, obviously, next year the C1 will be down to the same price as C10. So you can always wait a year; it'll be under $2,000 next year, maybe a lot lower than that, because it cost them a lot less this year to make the C1 than to make the C10 last year. Thank you, Ram, for that. And let's say maybe another last call, 5 more minutes of questions, and then I'm going to let you leave. Now we're at 2 hours, but thank you everyone for being here. We're here for you. We love talking TVs, and I know you got questions that need to be answered now because you're probably shopping tomorrow. Is the Sony Z8H good for gaming? Generally speaking, I don't like 8K TVs for gaming because there's too much processing happening that they're going to have to turn off to lower the latency. But then if they turn it off, then your 8K won't be as good looking as a 4K with it off because 8K needs a lot of processing to make it look good. And Brian at Whisper Status has been gaming on the Q900R and hates it, right? He doesn't like gaming 8K TV. Even if things improve, there's no reason to game in 8K. It's just you're putting too much pressure on the processor to do it fast, latency, HDR, and gaming. It's too much pain. That's my feel on 8K gaming.
It's a lot of resolution, man.
That's a lot of pixels to move.
Yeah.
Price aside, what TV would you get now? 65 inches. You got a gold credit card. What would you choose, Mr. Installer?
I I already did that. I got the A90J.
And me too. I
Yeah.
also, I mean, if we didn't do this for a living and our wives said, hey, get whatever TV you want, is the last TV you buy, right? Oh, okay, well then let me get the A90J. Now, to be fair, if I was in Europe, I would likely get the Panasonic JZ2000,
Yeah.
only because they've consistently done such a good job. That's just a touch better than what Sony and LG's been doing. So, but in the US, yeah, A90J.
I really want to get one of the Panasonics over here and
I
give
know,
it a,
right?
I really love to just get one and order it and bring it over here and check it out.
Oh no, more soundbar questions. I'm totally. Thank you, Cyborg, for the gift, but I cannot even begin to answer this. Other than I'd go with discrete channels 7.1 Denon than a soundbar because you cannot replace discrete speakers. And if the soundbar is that good, well, it's going to be pretty expensive, and you end up getting the same. So I'd go with discrete speakers all day long.
Yeah, you know, if you're gonna have a dedicated system, man, I mean that's completely different. You know, those are opposite ends of the spectrum. Sometimes people get the soundbar just out of ease of use and they don't want to wire up their house. So if you don't have to wire up your house, you know, you can save a bunch of money, but it's tough to beat some of these soundbars for the price of $500, you know, to put something in like that.
Hey, Josh, Matt, QNED 65-inch, and I think I mentioned it. So generally speaking, TVs under 1500. I rarely review only because over and over, I've been shown that the Hisense, the TCL, in that price range beats everything. Now, I understand not everyone gets the TCL or Hisense in their country. That's why they're asking me to review it. So I'll tell you what, the Q80T, I'd still choose that over the Q80A because it's a VA panel. Right there, we already know what the innate shortcomings of the VA panel, of the IPS panel are on the Q80A. Now, the 65-inch Q80A, I know the 55-inch is an IPS panel, so that's something that Artings has confirmed. I don't know if the 65-inch is an IPS panel as well, but if it's not, it's a VA panel, then you might as well just get the Q80T because it sounds like a very similar TV. I don't know. I don't plan to do the Q80A this year. Are you planning to do the Q80A at any time?
Man, you know how time flies, man. It's tough. It's tough to do a review on every single TV in the world. But I like your opinions on that. And the Q80T is a pretty solid TV. I know that those TVs, the Q80A and all those other ones, aren't going to have that anti-reflective coating. They're not going to look as good in bright rooms. You know, they're not going to be as bright either. So,
hey, made it. Before I turn off, so let's make this the last question before we go. My gadget world.
So, Mike.
LG OLED E6, old school since 2016, 7,000 hours, never had burn-in, still going strong, and worth 3,000 plus. I think this is an excellent comment. Not many people realize the nature of OLED is the blacks, right? Darkroom performance. That has always been great since the beginning. What they've been trying to do is, you know, maybe improve the motion, push up the brightness, but in a dark room, yeah, it still looks so good. Even the A1, I know people with the Sony A1, they don't want to change it because it looks great. What are they improving? Because they're not missing anything. Do you have anything that old in terms of an OLED, Brandon?
No, I don't have anything that old OLED wise. No, I was, I used to, I had, like I said, I had some Samsungs before. The K8000 was one of those TVs that I had for a few years, and not anything to write home about it before that.
Well, then let's wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. I do try to make this weekly thing if I can, you know, talk to guests, bring Brian on, bring Brandon on. Thank you. And if you guys haven't subscribed, please, we have Be the Installer. Not only does he review TVs, but you're also doing installations, which is something that I prefer to hire someone else to do. I am that because this is my theory on that. If I screw up, I have no one to blame myself, and then the family blames me, right? If you
that happens, it happens.
You have the scapegoat. So my approach is I'm paying for a scapegoat. Even
and I'll tell you what. Oh, sorry. It also happens where people try to do it themselves, and then they still call me, and then I got to undo all the bad work. So you know what? Just hire somebody.
I include that in the purchase every single time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brandon. Be the Installer. And we will see you next time.
Peace. See you guys.
Peace.